My name is Faye Macheke, and I'm one of the co-executive directors at AWID. I am delighted to welcome you to this fireside conversation, Resourcing Power to Freeze Fascism's Tongue Twister. We are joined by three brilliant feminist thinkers and doers today. Paz Romero, you might have seen on the streets of AWID community from Justice Funders. Alex Pittman from Impactmapper, and our very own Kasia Steshashka from AWID's Resourcing Feminist Movements Initiative. So over the next 90 minutes, we're going to be honest and we're going to engage in really bold conversations about the current state of funding, which you've just described on Mentimeter. We're going to talk about what it reveals, what it limits, but also how we can collaborate and how we can resist. Just last week, AWID's post-forum member mixer, we heard directly from many of you who joined us at the 15th International AWID Forum in Bangkok, if you still remember back in December, about how your own realities have shifted in the past 6 months due to the really drastic funding cuts. The Human Rights Funders Network estimated that foundation grants and foreign aid, the two largest sources for feminist and human rights organizing globally, that up to $1 billion a year could disappear by 2028. That's a lot of money, given the time frame. We are about just under 2 years from there. This wave of defunding, as we know, is not accidental. It has become a weaponized strategic attack, like the rise of foreign agent laws, to weaken civil society and dismantle the movements that fight for justice. And while development aid and philanthropic budgets are being slashed, billions continue to flow to anti-rights actors and now, lately, to defense budgets at an unprecedented scale. The current context is a challenge of our time as feminists and in general for feminist and women's fundraising in particular. For many of our groups, this moment is not about growth. It's about survival. It's in moments like these that we call for solidarity. So happy that there are many of us on this call, and it just shows that there is a spirit of collaboration, a need to connect, and to co-conspire together. And it's also in moments like these that we take action and take responsibility, like sharing tools, our knowledge, and our skills to navigate the political shifts and make sense of them together. None of us can do it alone. So today, I'm honored to host the fireside conversation, and to do just that, we're introducing 3 accessible tools designed to support feminist movements in navigating the funding ecosystem. On behalf of AWID, I am excited, drumroll, to officially launch a new resource we call Who Can Fund Me? It's a searchable database of over 200 funders committed to moving money to diverse feminist movements across regions and globally. Developed for feminist collectives, grassroots groups, and intersectional movements, all of us, the Who Can Fund Me tool supports activists to identify potential funders through a variety of filters, whether by geographic focus, type of funding, registration requirements, or key areas of feminist organizing. It's practical, it's user-friendly, and it's rooted in our commitment to ensure movements can access the resources they need, not only to survive, but to thrive. I am also absolutely thrilled to be launching this resource alongside our friends. Remember, I said collaboration and co-conspiring. So our friends at Impactmapper, who have been tracking funders' responses to international and USAID cuts. As of today, their database includes over 150 funding opportunities, all accessible through the Impactmapper platform. We're going to hear more about that shortly. And last, but certainly not least, I'm deeply honored to share this platform with an extraordinary member, AWID member and co-founder of Justice Funds, Paz Romero, who is officially launching today a brilliant and much needed resource, Getting the Money We Need, a 101 fundraising guide for small grassroots organization. Thanks, Paz. This is the time for such a tool. What we've known as feminist funding landscape is shifting. We've seen on the Menti all the words you've described it. But we also know that this is a profound moment and that this is irreversible. How it will look like in 10 years, I mean, hell, even in a month, is uncertain. But one thing is clear. Feminists are not passive recipients of this shift. We are active agents in shaping the future. Let's remember that resourcing feminist movements goes far beyond the money. Feminists have always drawn deep on deep wells of wisdom, on our creativity and our solidarity and mutual aid. This is what makes us so powerful, and in spite of everything, still unstoppable. Because we know this much to be true. We can burrow ourselves out of most of the messes by working together. So let's get to work. Let's meet our panelists and explore the tools that can help us navigate this shifting ecosystem and access the resources our movements need and deserve. So on the screen, I have Alex Pittman, a PhD, stands at the with a PhD stands at the forefront of impact tracking and storytelling for social justice, human rights, and sustainability. As the founder and CEO of Impactmapper, she and her team have developed a groundbreaking software tool empowering donors, nonprofits, corporates, and impact investors to track, visualize, and optimize their social impact funding and activities. She's also the founder of Having Has, and I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that correctly. I will ask you to repeat it later. A retreat center for impact leaders and change makers in Norwegian Forts. Welcome, Alexandra. We also have, as I said before, Paz Romero, who's a queer, neurodivergent community organizer and storyteller from Argentina. She co-founded Justice Funds to support grassroots access to funding in the Global South. Her work bridges feminist organizing, economic justice, and digital strategy, centering care and accessibility and sustainability in movement building. You may have seen her on the AWID community streets. Welcome, Paz. And finally, we have our very own Kasia at AWID, who leads AWID's resourcing movements initiative team and joins us from Warsaw, Poland. A long-term activist, she has contributed to feminist organizing for abortion, climate, and migrants' justice. Kasia is also a sauna enthusiast. I didn't know that about you, Kasia, and absolutely adores her dog, Wooly, who I know very well. So welcome, Kasia. Okay, that was a bit of a mouthful. Right. I am going to move to your questions. You have about 5 to 7 minutes to answer your questions, and I do not mean to interrupt you, but if you do pass the time, I will gently nudge you so that you know. The feminist resourcing ecosystem has long been a space of rife with dramatic events, restructuring complexities around power and voice. In 2025, the resourcing landscape is not just shifting, but shrinking. Already under-resourced feminist movements face further cuts and freezes, and even greater challenges when it comes to raising resources to survive, much less continue their work. I'm going to start with you, Paz. As a young activist, perhaps given what we know about the current global resourcing landscape, how are you experiencing the day-to-day realities of fundraising and navigating the shifting context? And it's a bit of a mouthful, so please bear with me. What challenges are showing up in your own engagement at Justice Funds? We also know that you are very much in the AWID community and have picked up a nugget or two there. And perhaps more importantly, what needs are emerging for feminist movements right now? Thank you, Paz.
Thank you. Thank you, Faye. Thank you for the young activist. So nervous. There's so many amazing activists here today. I'm very honored to be sharing this panel with these amazing speakers. I want to start by maybe problematizing a bit this whole shifting context concept. You mentioned some of the words in the Menti were limited, difficult, uncertain, fragile, unjust, and complex. And the question is, did that wasn't the case before? It certainly was. So I want to start by saying, this is not just we're not just experiencing lack of funds. We're experiencing a whole collapse of the assumptions that we had around how funds move around the whole philanthropic ecosystem. So for example, when we started Justice Funds with Julia, the other co-founder, we did it because we were both sort of shifting from more localized grassroots activism here to start to discover the whole international ecosystem and how it works. And we were like, where's that money? Because we never seen that here. It's not that money wasn't here in the organizations that we knew, in the ecosystem that we knew locally. It was that like a previous step, right? Activism here is very linked to volunteering, and I'm not talking about how the global north allocates a couple of hours per week to volunteer a cause. I'm talking about community initiatives being sustained by unpaid labor from activists, and that's a system that keeps repeating, and that didn't change in the last year. Of course, many of you here now belong or work in an organization that experienced a cut in their fundings since last year, especially since this January, when Trump decided to finish with USAID and other agencies. But to be honest, the whole philanthropic system is broken. And as many other, the whole economic system in the world is collapsing, this is also collapsing. And this is also opportunity to set new foundations as feminists, because feminism for me is just saying this is wrong, I'm going to do something about it. That's feminism for me. And I feel like we are now in a moment to offer new foundations for how the money moves and sustains movements in general. So this is where I want to open. The whole philanthropic system is broken. We see it, I have to research and curate a list of funding opportunities for the South, and sometimes I work along with small organizations to apply, etc. And sometimes I am applying for, great initiatives, for example, for progressive governments like Canada or France, who are very much interested in climate justice. But then I see that a big part of our Patagonia here in Argentina, Chile, is taken by big companies from there. So at the same time, I'm we are asking for money to resource, indigenous or youth initiatives here in the South to fight and mitigate the impact that these big companies from those countries are impacting, how stealing our water. So the whole system, I feel like Lisa Simpson saying the whole damn system is wrong. But this is very important, because now we have the opportunity to use this crisis that is not new, that is only, made it worse in a sense, to set, new foundations for that. And the needs that emerge aren't new, are new. We need core funding, we need multi-year funding, we need unrestricted funding. And we need the people that are directly facing their own social issues to have the power to keep doing that. We need all the people that are here today to have money to keep doing what they are already doing and have been doing to protect their own communities. So that answers, but that's my piece of comment for now.
Thank you, Paz. I really liked your nugget of I see something wrong and I'm going to do something about it. And this meeting is really about we are doing something about what we've always been saying. And talking about doing something in such a shifting funding landscape, it can be really hard to grasp the full picture. We just from that Menti, we can see that there's a sense of being overwhelmed, there's a sense of being too much, but also a sense of desperation. Kashya, AWID's Resourcing Feminist Movement Initiative, has been watching the state of the feminist funding ecosystem for the last 2 decades. That's like 20 years. We've been saying the same thing. From that vantage point, what do you think is most critical for activists to know right now about the funding landscape in this context, in this moment?
Thank you so much, Faye, and a warm hello to you, Paz and Alex. I'm truly delighted to be sharing this fireside chat with you because this really is the moment of deep reckoning. The movements we love, the movements we organize with, whether we're talking about the movements fighting for justice and dignity for women, for LGBTQI people, for people living with disabilities, indigenous communities, and so many others are really systematically targeted in the moment, and not a week can pass, sometimes not a day can pass. And I believe that for many of us in this call, this really is an everyday reality that we hear about the groups we're close with that have to either let their staff go or close their critical life-saving programs, like whether it's a community soup kitchens in Sudan, whether these are human rights defenders program in the Middle East, whether these are people organizing for migrants' rights here in Poland, supporting refugees that are crossing the border with Belarus, you name it. And really this last year, I mean, I absolutely agree with you, Paz. What we're seeing this is not new, but the scale is new. Over the last year, we've seen devastating cuts to development aid from many major countries, many of which we've known as long-term supporters of gender equality and women's rights, whether we're talking about the funding from the Dutch, whether we're talking about the funding from Sweden, UK, France, and so many others. And in real life situations, what it means is that these cuts have dismantled thousands of essential life-saving programs. Many of them were feminist-led and gender justice-focused. And philanthropy, as we used to know it, is also in retreat. So many philanthropic partners, so many philanthropic funders, including Wellspring Funds, the Sigrid Rousing Trust, the Open Society Foundations, have either decided to close their women's rights and gender justice programs, or they have scaled back profoundly on that work. Faye has shared quite a number. I believe it was 1 billion that we might be losing by 2028. And there's a lot of numbers flying around. And I think, Alex, you will also share a little bit more what you're seeing from where you're sitting. But from the perspective of AWID, our latest Where's the Money survey Where's the Money for Feminist Organizing survey that built on responses from over 1,200 feminist groups and organizations showed that the median annual budget of feminist groups between 2021 and 2023 was under 30,000 USD. So to put it in perspective, this is virtually any change since AWID last fully fledged Where's the Money survey from a decade back. And groups working on caste equality, resisting the wars on drugs, sex workers' rights, those organizing for disability justice continue to be the least funded. 60% of the groups that filled the Where's the Money survey said that they felt pressure to align with funders' political agendas in order to access any financial support, and clearly the funding of feminist groups expressing solidarity with Palestine people is a stark example of that. Already in 2024, because this is when the survey took place, so before this intensification of crisis that we're facing today, 65% of respondents to the survey said they could only survive for 6 months or less if their external funding was to be cut, and nearly half have already faced the risk of closure. So just to echo what you said, Faye, in the beginning, that for many feminist groups, this really is about the survival. But if I can leave you with one key message, it is this. Feminist movements have never relied solely on institutional funding. We have always sustained ourselves through mutual aid, from community care, through shared knowledge and collective power. And as you said, Paz, many of the most marginalized groups have never even had access to development or philanthropic funding that we are seeing disappearing to begin with. That's why it's really essential to recognize and amplify the way feminists have sustained themselves outside of formal funding channels, and to put it in numbers, again, in the context of AWID's Where's the Money survey, 80% of our respondents reported relying on self-generated resources, not just financial, but also material, relational, and political. That these include wisdom, networks, skills, and strategies that keep movements alive and aligned with their values. But I also just I don't want to over-romanticize it. I also just want to be clear. Autonomous resourcing is not a silver bullet. It's not possible or even accessible for all the groups, and it cannot replace the urgent need for public and philanthropic funding. But it is our political anchor. And if we are to safeguard our feminist values, we must continue to have access to external funding, but without really being dependent on it. Easier said than done, of course. But this means acting with urgency and solidarity and supporting those of us, those feminists that are in most precarious situations at the moment, because this crisis is not affecting all of us equally, while we collectively reimagine and rebuild the feminist funding ecosystem for the long term. So that's why we really need to continue holding the spaces to have those complex and sometimes contradictory conversations, as we do hold the space today, without being paralyzed and without putting one strategy over another. Because it's really time to radically reimagine how we sustain our work and how we relate to money. Because this really is part of our intersectional feminist politics of liberation, and it is at the core of our broader visions for just, caring, and life-centered economies. Thank you.
Thank you, Kasia. I think I have really professional panelists today. Thank you for keeping to your time. And thanks for joining us. For those that are coming in, I can see some questions start to filter through. We will have a question and answer session right at the end. So carrying on this stream, Kasia, you mentioned systematic. There's a pattern. You mentioned the scale of the cuts, and you also mentioned the urgency that we have to be in solidarity and collectively reimagine, but also collectively action, right? Alex, you have done a lot of work in terms of actioning, and you have done the work in terms of tracking funders' responses in today's really shifting context. And talking of patterns, what kind of patterns or opportunities are you seeing in this moment that might be useful for feminist movements to tap into?
Wonderful. Thank you. And thank you for this really rich conversation. I'm very happy to be here with you all today. Yeah, this moment, as we all know, we're facing some stark times. And I think we all were in a very similar place, just watching all of these funding cuts happening, feeling overwhelmed by it, right? Knowing the fallout over time, and kind of sitting in that space wasn't comfortable, as we all know. And I was trying to figure out how can we at Impactmapper do something to help, like do something to support the field, to support the sector at this moment. And that's when the idea came for building this database of funding commitments so that we could start seeing the glimmers of hope in this space, to start seeing who was stepping up and how they were stepping up and in what ways. I'll showcase the database that we've been building in a moment, but so far this has been a pro bono activity that different team members are taking on and building. We're doing this manually right now, finding and curating all the commitments that are being made through press releases and so on. But we're amassing a lot of information every single week. We're adding more and more data, which is heartening, right? And so, yes, it is hard. I'll talk a bit more about some of the patterns in a moment, but I do want to underscore, that there's also opportunities, and hopefully some of you will see some things that might align with, what you're working on. I think generally, in relation to this project and what we're seeing come out of it, at the very beginning, we actually started this in March, building this database. And what we started to see at the beginning was kind of this influx in that rapid response funding, right? So we started seeing a lot of donors coming from that angle. How do we fill the gaps? And then others being a bit more strategic. I would say some of the rapid response funding was a bit smaller, and then other donors like the Norwegian government or other governments, EU commissions, coming in with much bigger pots of money to support gender equality, gender-based violence work, things that were seeing really significant hits. So that was one of the first trends that we started to see. We saw groups like African Women's Development Fund, European Commission, the Norwegian government, as I mentioned, Feminist Now, Global Affairs Canada, many of these groups coming and stepping up with additional commitments. We also saw, as I mentioned, the rise of some rapid response funding. These were generally general in nature, often focused on the humanitarian issues, because as we know, a lot of, the USAID cut was impacting so many humanitarian response organizations. And so we saw groups such as the Founders Pledge and Life You Can Save, launching a rapid response fund to bridge those humanitarian gaps. And they raised $3 million in over 1 month. And they started distributing these through rapid response grants to different organizations, which was, really exciting to see. There's also an interesting initiative by Foreign Aid Bridge Fund, by Unlock Aid, that also surpassed $1 million in donations in just over a month since it's launched, and started granting those out to high impact organizations. They received over 550 requests in that first month. And of course, we're only able to give 14. So it shows, of course, there's still an incredibly huge need. Another trend we started to see was around endowment increases. So of course, we all saw MacArthur Foundation stepping up as one of the first out the gates to say we're actually increasing our endowment. Over the next 2 years, we're going to give at least $150 million, right? To see such a large, prominent foundation starting to make that commitment, I think it's really important in this space. And the hope was that other foundations follow suit, right? There's kind of a mobilization element here that they were really working with, and I think there's some evidence that others are coming on, although it's slower to see. We also saw Freedom Together Foundation making commitments to increase to use some of their endowment to increase grant making as well. Another trend we saw was actually doubling down on current grantees, right? So some funders were really focused on making sure their current grantees were safe, that they had the capital they needed in the face of these cuts, that there was some sort of safety net for them to move on. And so I think that's an important trend that we were seeing as well come out of our analysis. Another trend, and this is, maybe it's a trend, maybe it's not, we'll see, only the future will tell. But I think, with the Gates Foundation, obviously making a commitment to spend down the foundation over the next 20 years, that's $200 billion, right, that they're spending down to really accelerate the achievement of their mission. That's also a call for other funders, right? Do they want to just continue to do grant making in perpetuity, or do they want to switch and have a deadline and actually start giving away this capital at a much higher rate than they have been in the past? So that's an interesting way to try to meet this moment, right? And the great needs that we're facing at this time. In terms of thinking about how you might access funding, thinking differently about it. I think one of the central tenets and the power that we have as feminists and is that kind of analysis of intersectionality, looking at how all of these different issues come together and interplaying in different spaces. And so, in what ways can some of the work be framed in areas of health? How can some of these issues be framed in, sexual and reproductive health and rights, right? How can you think about health tech or environment, climate justice, right? So when you're looking at those funding opportunities, trying to find some of the threads and showcase the ways in which you're contributing to change in very diverse ways. And I have some really great examples of this to show you at the end of the session. That's not the database, but actually is a report we did a few years ago on the power of feminist movement building and how when you fund from a feminist perspective and fund feminist movement building organizations, you actually are funding multiple SDGs and often a big chunk of them, right? And we have concrete examples of all the SDGs that these organizations have been touching and so on, and I can show that to you. But thinking strategically about how do we frame our work in that broader context to then speak to our impact to get some of these funds as well as an interesting strategy for the future. A final trend that I wanted to underscore and share is just, it's the numbers, right? And these are numbers from the US. And this was from research in 2023, and this was a research from Giving USA, and $374.4 billion was coming from individuals in the US. Right? That was the largest amount of funding. 103 billion was granted through foundations in 2023 and 36.55 billion through corporate giving. And then there was 54 billion granted through donor advised funds. So I just wanted to kind of contextualize that, right? So there's a huge power also at this time of leveraging our communities. I think Paz, you were really underscoring this as well. How do we actually engage differently in the fundraising process? So I'm going to stop there. Some trends to bubble up, and then I'm going to show you the database so you can check some trends out yourself in a moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. I think this is the question I have been continuously asked, but where is the money? Who actually is giving money now? And you've provided a really good example in framing. We don't talk about SDGs generally, but here's the framing that you are providing. So thank you for that. And speaking of impact, I'm going to go to the next questions in which you have 8 minutes. And I'm going to ask the same question to all of you. And the question is, in a moment like this, what are some of the tools of feminist action to reclaim resourcing power to freeze fascisms? I'm going to start with you, Kasia, and then I won't repeat the question, but Paz, you can go next, and then Alex, you can finish off on this session, and then we'll move on to questions. So off you go. Thank you, Kasia.
Thanks, Faye. I'm just going to start with a feminist disclaimer. We all know that revolution is not going to be funded because neither aid or philanthropy were ever designed to support our transformative objectives and long-term survival. The colonial legacies, the political compromises, and structural fragility are now laid bare in front of our eyes. And yet, we believe that we still can and must claim both public and philanthropic resources and redirect them towards the collective good, because we should demand these funds as a form of reparative redistribution, not because they will save us, but because they are owed to our movement. They were stolen from the communities many of us come from and accumulated through the systems we resist. And really, this is the political context behind the tool that we call Who Can Fund Me, that database, which has been built to support resourcing feminist collective power in the times of scarcity and repression. And before I take you through this, I also really want to thank AWID incredible team behind this work, especially Dea, our movements engagement lead, who has been working on this project for almost 2 years now, Ritu, our IT manager, our fabulous comms team, who have really worked for a long time to make it possible. And a disclaimer, initially we wanted to build for you this beautiful, accessible website, and this is still a plan, but because of the moments we're in, we decided to launch it a little bit earlier in the form of an Airtable database, just to share with you the tool that you can use to support your fundraising. So I'm going to ask my colleagues to paste the link in the chat to Who Can Fund Me Airtable. If my colleagues can do that, and as they do, I'm going to share my screen and just show you how this looks like and how can you use it. So I'm going to share my screen now. Yes. So that's how the Who Can Fund Me Airtable looks like. As you can see, and as you will see, today is the call about databases. But we are excited about this specific database because it's a searchable, easy to use directory of over 200 funders who have publicly committed to supporting gender justice and feminist organizing, and it's designed specifically to help grassroots feminist groups identify potential donors and potential opportunity. So when we ask our members, AWID members, our friends and partners, what is it that they need most in this moment? A directory like this was one of the top requests. And because we know that at the times when funding is shrinking, feminist groups are looking for money, for alignment, for possibilities. A few quick things to know. The database is currently in English, but it is our intention to also have it available in French and Spanish. All the entries in the database are based on funders' websites and publicly available information. So there's nothing top secret here. You can, and we encourage you to look for more information at the places that are available for you. And it's also a living document. Our commitment and our aim is to review and update this database on a bi-monthly basis. So how to navigate that? That's important because we thought, and the intention of this website we were building, and I hope that we will continue to build, is to help you to adjust your search in a way that responds to the realities of your organizing as much as this is possible. So you will see here at the top of the database the specific filters. So for example, you can search for funders that according to your regional focus, whether you're looking for funders in Central Asia, or whether you're looking for funders that are funding globally across region. You can look for different types of funders. You can search for funding from women's and feminist funds. You can search for funders from philanthropic foundations, from multilateral funders, whatever support you may need at the moment. We have also thought about curating the search based on the type of funding that you might want to need. We all know that, we all love core funding. Who are funders funding globally, for example, that are, let's say, multilateral funders? Oh, there is one that are doing core funding. So that are some of the filters that you may play with. You can also search for funders based on your registration status, whether you are registered or you're not registered. Of course, not all funders provide that information. So for some, it's not specified. For some, it's dependent on programs, but it's there. Grant duration, obviously, different forms of funding that you can search for. And an important filter that I think might, and this is what we've heard also from our friends, from our members when we did the testing, is what we call movement in focus. So you can look for funders that match the main focus of your organizing. And also just a disclaimer, this list was developed by the AWID team according to funders' official thematic priorities in order to make the database more searchable for users' respective needs. This is not by no means an exhaustive list and may be updated in the future iterations, but we thought it would really help with identifying the funding opportunities, whether if you're working with specific teams or with specific movements. As you look for funders, you can combine those filters. You can look for funders that are funding globally, that are women's and feminist funds, for example, that are doing rapid response emergency grant, and for example, don't need a registration from their grantee partner. So this is just some of the combinations you can play with. The other thing I wanted to point out to you is that the list of funders at the moment is by default alphabetical. So starting with A, so you can search for funders in an alphabetical order, but you can also do it. You can also sort that list, in a way that makes most sense for you. For example, by the regional focus or who can be funded. So there are different ways that you can play with, and here you will also see how to use Who Can Fund Me database guide that can take you step by step through different filters, through different search options in the database. So you don't need to take notes, everything is there, and hopefully in a way that is easy to understand and follow. The one last thing I wanted to say about this database is that it's a living crowdsourced tool. So of course it's not complete. It has over 200 entries, and we are really, really committed to continue building the list. It's by no means exhaustive. So if you know of funders that are supporting feminist organizing who are not yet on this list, or if you are a funder that is committed to support feminist organizing and you're not seeing yourself on this list, please make yourself known to us. Here you can see the form where you can submit your expression of interest to be listed in Who Can Fund Me database. We will be reviewing this on a regular basis and make sure that you can be there and really share this information with the global community of feminist movements. Also, obviously, as I said, the data in the database are based on publicly accessible information. We're also humans, so we might make mistakes. Those priorities change all the time. We know how it is. So we also request, for your understanding in case you will find some inaccuracies in this database. I feel if it's, it's not really avoidable, but we want to hear from you. So if your priorities change or you feel that or there are some data that we have missed, please let us know also through the contact form. Okay, I think I'm going to leave you here. It's my real pleasure to be launching this on behalf of the team, together with the fundraising guide from Paz and with the Airtable from Alex at Impactmapper, because I think together this really is a kind of a menu of options that might hopefully help you to navigate the ecosystem in that moment. Of course, it is what it is. It's not going to fix the crisis. It's not going to, to make everything work. But hopefully, this is part of this, collective solidarity, sharing of wisdom, sharing the tools that we have that can help us survive and resist these difficult times. And on this note, I'm going to hand over to Paz or Alex. Who was this, Faye?
Thank you, Kasia. It will be Paz. And Paz, while you're getting ready, just a reminder to keep your questions coming. They are, and thank you to the AWID team. There are already answers for these questions. A lot of love and appreciation for the AWID team. Thank you, Kasia. This is amazing as one of them. This is incredible. But it does answer the question, so who the hell can fund me now? And as Kasia said, this is a living document. It is the launch. It is right here for you guys and for all of us. So thank you for that. Paz, there was a question that hasn't been answered yet, but asking about mentoring and what to do with resource mobilization for young women with disabilities. And I think you hold that answer not only for them, but actually for everybody else. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Faye. Yes, I have something to offer. I don't know if this is not mentorship, anything like that, but I have something to offer here. I want to start by saying what an amazing database that the Who Can Fund Me initiative built. This is also a response to the burnout that activists face all the time when raising funds. So having everything in an easy way, enjoyable way, to filter and read and access and apply, it's very important. And so this whole section was guided by a question that was, what are some of the tools of feminist action to reclaim resourcing power, to freeze fascisms, which is a campaign right now that AWID is doing. We want to start by saying, to freeze fascisms, we also need to fund the resistance, and the resistance is a wider concept, right? Because it is also the communities taking care of their own communities, as I was saying before, and grassroots collectives are spending hours adapting to always shrinking pots of and getting ourselves into this competitive mindset of like fighting to get that money, and the emotional labor that we face in that is huge. We wait for responses that never come. We wait, we write proposals in a second language, because most of us, me included, I'm a Spanish speaker. I learned English, but it's not my first language, so it implies a bit more effort. And we also feel disposable in a sense, you know, because I have applied. I was coordinating a grassroots initiative here in my city, and I spent weeks applying to a grant of a feminist fund, and I never heard back, even for feedback. And I know that that's the reality of many of you. I know that. And I want to quickly mention three cases of three conversations that I had with three different leaders that sort of give a sense of the whole ecosystem and how wrong it is in a sense. There's an organization, I won't name the names because I haven't asked them right now. I asked them last year and same thing happened. There's an organization in Afghanistan who was working with children and literature, amazing workshops, etc. They had a great organization working after 2021 when the Taliban took over. They couldn't really measure things like they were doing before, right? Because like, how could you are going to set a monitoring and evaluation framework in when you're at risk all the time? So some funders, she was telling me, some funders started to get skeptical about like, is that impact real? Because the North understands impact in numbers. And I want to ask you, do you think that because they can't measure their impact in numbers, does that mean that they don't have impact? So another case is a man from Uganda that was telling me that he worked with education. You know, this conversation was last September, so he was telling me, like, now we are trying to get the children back to school, right? And I was asking him, how do you deal with like not having funds for that, for all the work that he was doing with hundreds of children? And he was very frustrated. He told me that because he was working in education, every time he was asking for funds or support, he received books, he received materials for the schools. He was telling me, in order for me to get the children to school, I need HIV kits and food support for the parents. And that's another example of how the North imposes a solution for us that it doesn't really match how we understand our social issues. And the same with the woman from Syria. She was telling us like how there was a funder that heard that there was a specific zone in Syria where the aid should go. And she was telling me, like, I was trying to tell him, if we go there, we will die. You know, like, and because the funders from the North know better our problems and how to deal with our issues, is that we created this guide that I'm going to share right now. Give me a minute. So this guide was made of, no, I can't talk and read. Give me a second. Here. Okay, so this guide was made because of these patterns, right? Because of noticing all these patterns and how do we negotiate with funders? How can we build, you know, how can we spend less time and effort and get to and tailor our proposals and our communications to more funders? So this is what we did. I'm very happy about this. You don't know how many months I worked with this. This is a guide that I'm sure that Fatima will share the link now or soon. This is a PDF, right? This is something that is for you to share, to print, to whatever you want, to read it on the phones. For example, we made it in a way that these are very little things that have political intention to make it nice, to make it enjoyable, to make it, I don't know, the fonts are a bit bigger so that you can read it on your phones. You have a navigation bar so you can go quickly to the glossary if you find a concept that you don't understand. You can go back to the table of contents all the time, because this is not a reading resource that you have to read from A to Z. Right, this is a consultation tool. This is something for you to, when you want to work on a specific area, you can go, like for example, how to collect and communicate impact data, right? So you can quickly go to all of those chapters and read it, so it makes sense for you. And this was all very intentional build. This is to make this is our intention, to make the funding ecosystem a bit more welcoming to small organizations or grassroots organizations, because as Casual was saying, and as I was saying before, like many of you, many of us, never received funding. And this is something that I always hear, like people, like we apply for a grant and they ask, how's your budget? And my budget is 0. And it has been 0 for many years. So this is a way that we can start to get ourselves into the funding ecosystem in a more easy and enjoyable way. And you will see how there are many messages of, I don't want to use the word empowerment, but to make you feel like you hold the narrative here. And we received many, this was co-created with very active members and followers from justice funds who are very interested in something like this, but it was also co-created with some members from the AWID community and many people that were offering feedback. It has been a very amazing journey to build this. And we received many comments, for example, this one, if your work says, this is about impact, right? This is the chapter about how to collect and communicate impact data. If your work saves lives, creates safety, shifts narratives, or builds collective power, that's impact. But remember, not all impact is measurable in numbers. Healing, empowerment, safety, visibility, these matter too. Real change often happens in the quiet relational spaces over shared tea, in voice notes, in the confidence of a community member who finally feels heard. That's impact too. You will see that kind of messages trying to shift the narrative to you owning your cause, your ways of doing things, and how to better negotiate with funders who will try to negotiate it another way, I would say. So yeah, this has taken a lot of work and thought to put together the information in a way that is, you will notice that the paragraphs are very short, that everything is bulleted. We have a lot of links. We have templates as well. There was a template in the prospect list, how to build a prospect list, for example. Here, this is like, you can click here and it will take you to a template that you can duplicate and start to fill for yourselves. The funder name, the focus areas, and this is a great complement to the database from Hook and Family. So yeah, and in the last page, we decided, my computer is a bit slow. Here, we decided to make this additional resources part in a living document as well. So because this is a PDF and now it is closed, we wanted to offer as Hook and Family as well, right? A form where you can send, handbooks, templates, real documents. There was a lot of people asking for examples of good theory of change, good, communication strategy, etc., etc. So here you can access a living document, a Google Doc, where you can start to see all the documents that I'm adding there. It's the list of links, but you can contribute to that as well. What else? And I'm very happy to say that this will be translated into Spanish and French, which is great. And yeah, I don't know if I have much else to say. Let me go through my notes. No, it's just, yeah, this guide is just one step in building a resourcing. I don't want to say literacy, but it's not just to make funding more accessible. It's just for you to feel more welcome into the ecosystem, in the funding ecosystem, because the funding ecosystem belongs to you. And as Kasia was saying, philanthropy is not just aid; it is taking money back that belong to us. Yeah.
Thank you, Paz. And I'm going to repeat the quote from your guide that Kasia put in the chat. You don't have to do it all at once. You don't have to do it alone. And I think that's what this is representing. Thank you so much, Paz. Again, lots of love. One comment: what an amazing tool! It is so refreshing to have access to it. Gracias, Paz. Thank you both. We continue with our last presenter. Alex, I'm going to repeat the question again for those people that have just come in. In a moment like this, what are some of the tools of feminist action to reclaim resourcing power to freeze fascisms? Take it away.
Great. Yes. So I will start off by introducing the 2020-25 funding commitment database that Impactmapper has been building. As I've mentioned, we're kind of scraping this data from the web and creating this database so we can actually visibilize what's usually hidden, right? Or we only see one or two announcements on LinkedIn or in the news, etc. So we wanted to make all that information free and available to the sector and organizations that are in need of funding information. The goals of this database are, of course, to highlight these funding commitments and different initiatives that are launched to address international funding gaps and to address these cuts that are happening. We also want to acknowledge the commitments of the philanthropies and other funding bodies at this critical moment. Hopefully using some of this data to persuade others to lift up the amazing work as real opportunities for others to follow suit, right? And we also want to equip nonprofits and social enterprises with insights into these new potential funding avenues and highlight some innovative projects that are happening today in the funding landscape. Even though it's quite challenging, there are some interesting opportunities for growth, collaboration, etc. So as we've been building the database, we also are starting to write small pieces on different issues, some blogs, etc., to get more information out to the field. So, one of the things that we do at Impactmapper, we do a lot of monitoring, evaluation, learning, storytelling, and impact reporting. And so I'll talk a little bit about that after I showcase the database. But as we were trying to think about how do we contribute at this moment, it became super obvious. We really are experts in analyzing qualitative data. That's one of the things that really differentiates us as like an impact tracking and evaluation company. And so what we've done is not only, I'm going to share the link to sign up now in the chat. It might, just so you know, it might take a little bit of time for you to get an okay and actually get access to the database. Initially, we had this open and we got some people writing and saying, you know what, at this time, maybe you should actually put a little bit of a screen in place to make sure that the people that want access to this are kind of the right kind of people and not just kind of give access to all. So you just have to sign up for a newsletter, and we will make sure you're good, and then we'll send you this database that we've been creating. So just kind of a heads up there. So as you can see, it's Airtable again. Very cool that AWID's doing the same, right? So we have, this very accessible view of all of the different funding opportunities. Right now, it's already up to 206. As I mentioned, every week we're adding new resources. So you'll constantly seeing this change. By the end of the week, there'll be 250. We have a backlog of things that we need to add into this database. So definitely that's exciting to see that there's constantly more happening. And just to kind of showcase some of the fields, we have the organization, the news, wherever that came from, a short summary of the commitment. We have the capital here in the extra funding column. We have the funding geographies. We have this tagged. This is where the work, of tagging the data comes in, right? So taking just the basic information, we've also added all these additional fields. So tagged by pretty specific thematic areas, which is nice. So you can see many different types of issues here that might be relevant. The data was added, the funding type, and I'll show you a different view of this in a moment. The organization type, so is this a foundation? Is this a multilateral organization, an NGO, a pooled fund, a firm, investment firm, etc.? We've also coded for, was this commitment due to the aid cut and like really specifically connected there? Or was this just like a general open call, right? So we wanted to make sure we were differentiating based on those. Some other notes, the status, some of these have been commitments and have been launched. Some of them are still to be launched and some of them are already closed, right? And so that's something else to be looking out for, and then kind of funding regional bodies. So all of this, is here for you. It's super cool. You can, scroll through, see all this different information here, and hopefully find some things that might be relevant to you. But then we also have this organization, in different views already for you. So you can check out, the list of all the funders by name. This one is cool where you're kind of seeing, by nature of funding. So we have, all of the funding connected to aid cuts versus all the normal funding. And we also have, this is like each of them in one view. And then you have like one view of just the response to aid cut funders and one that's just the normal funders. And then we also have a filter here on funding type. So you can check out who are some of the groups that have funded through endowment increases, who are the ones that are raising funds, who are doing, rapid response funding. It's a normal grant making fund. Let's see here. Yeah, with a lot of grant making funds, investment funds, cash transfers, government, challenges awards. Yeah, lots of different options here, direct aid. And so there's a lot of different options that you can just kind of look and filter by. And then you always can just come back to the by organization for the full list. If you want, you can also apply filters as well to just kind of restrict the data based on certain fields. It's pretty straightforward. You just pick your field and add your restriction. You might come to the view. So you should identify and just say you want to see your own view. But sometimes people make it a public view. And then if so, there might be a really small list here. Maybe there's only like 3. And you'll see a filter up on the top and you can just say delete the filter. Everyone has read-only access, so you're not like deleting the database. So don't worry about that. So this is an overview of the database. And we hope that you all find it helpful. We also do these impact data chats, usually every other month at Impactmapper around different topics. And some of what we do there too is like crowdsource resources. We crowdsource information on new funding opportunities. And then we also, if they're not already in our list, we'll add anything new. If you see anything that you know of that's not in the list, please just send a quick message. I can leave my LinkedIn here and my email. But yeah, it's all really great just to, we're constantly searching for new commitments and really want to make this a resource that's helpful for everyone at this time. So this is the funding database. I wanted to briefly just showcase some of the other work that might be useful for you. As I mentioned, one of the things we do a lot of at Impactmapper is helping organizations to set up their monitoring, evaluation, and learning systems. To measure impact. We often do this with funders and nonprofit organizations. And we use a lot of participatory methodologies usually when we do this. And in particular, I do a lot of participatory story data collection workshops and processes. And I developed this methodology that kind of brings in a most significant change methodology. It's a hybrid often with outcome harvesting. And basically, we train you and show you how to actually collect these stories, code them for themes so you can aggregate the themes that are occurring across all of these different stories and then visualize them. And then you can actually pair that along with other quantitative data that you have. So it's a way that we can get back to listening to the voices of people to define our indicator frameworks. It's amazing. This is a guide I wrote so many years ago. So this is like 2015 that I wrote this guide. It's a bit old in terms of, you'll see some pictures of the Impactmapper software, which are not current at all. So you can see how far we've come. But it's very specific and it's a how-to guide on how to actually collect these stories and so on. So it's a free resource. Check it out, read it. I also do trainings on this. So if this is something that's interesting to you and your organization, let us know. The other thing that I wanted to show you is this impact report that we produced a few years.
Sorry, Alex, I'm going to give you maybe 1 more minute because your time's up and we just want to make sure that we have enough time for questions. Very interesting. Yeah, if you can just wrap up. Thank you.
I'm going to wrap up very quickly. I just want to, again, I'm coming back and circling back to that point that I made earlier about the importance of connecting this work to other issues as well, and really showcasing evidence around how the work you're doing is connected to multiple different issue areas or SDGs. This is a research project that we did that actually showcases that and goes through and shows how these different organizations created these big wins, how they were aligned with the different SDGs, and what specifically they did. So just to say, just trying to offer some different resources and ways of thinking about presenting and analyzing the impact of your work to then support the fundraising that you're doing. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. So much information, so much rich information, but actually really good tools that from the comment section have really been needed. This is the right time to be launching them, and they work so well together. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Kasia, and thank you, Paz. There is lots of information here, some of them asking for your contacts. Our team is busy inputting all the required information, but we do have time, a few minutes for questions. I thought we might have longer, but we don't. I see some of the questions have been answered, but I want to ask the questions that we have there. Can you help me with where the questions are?
Yes, I can. Give me a moment.
Thank you. In the meantime, there are many links that have been shown on the chat. Please just download them. There's a visualizing change guide. There's a report by Impactmapper, the Women's Movements and SDGs report. If you need anything else, please either post on the AWID community, post on this chat. We would love to hear from you. Also, a gentle reminder that AWID community is for members. Here's a question I'm going to ask that's from for any of you, that's from the chat. In the Sahel, feminist organizing means survival. We face armed extremism, mass displacement, and deep poverty, yet funding is shrinking, and a new anti-LGBTQI plus law in Burkina Faso criminalizes promoting homosexuality or trans identities. Sisters, how can funders safely and boldly support feminist movements under repressive regimes and in high-risk zones? We need flexible, long-term and political funding, projects of course, but beyond protection, holistic protection, resistance and hope. I know you're not philanthropy, but you have been engaging in these spaces. So would any of you like to answer this question? Kasia, you have another question later on, so perhaps Alex or Paz.
I don't have much to say. I'm going to be honest here. We've seen over and over how philanthropy and funds in general failed, to support Palestine, to support Sudan, to support now Iran, to support Syria, as I mentioned earlier. I really don't want to give a bad view of this, but and I want to give the hope here, but I'm not. I don't have an answer here. That's why we try to that's why my intention was to put together some points on how to negotiate with funders. But to be honest, this is homework for funders. This is things that has to do like the philanthropic system, But to be honest, I think I trust more mutual aid than philanthropic money going into high-risk zones. And I trust more community organizing to protect itself. And I trust more, people sharing, as it happened with Palestine, like the internet is down, we need to buy eSIMs, okay, and people sharing that and giving a collective, specific action. I trust that more, to be honest. But maybe Kasia or Alex can offer a more hopeful view than mine.
Thank you. Thank you, Paz. And I'm going to go back to what you said already. If you see something wrong, then you act on it. And this is part of the actions. It really is an appeal to philanthropy. And it's a question, while we may not answer it in this session, but we hold because we do have a right for funders to ask those questions. And this is part of the fight. So thank you from Sahel. Kasia, you have two questions. I'm going to ask them together just in the interest of time. I think after that, and ask that you shorten your answer because I'm looking at the time and we don't have much. So the first one is, how can the Who Can Fund Me database ensure that funding opportunities are truly accessible to grassroots feminist groups in conflict zones? Are there specific strategies to prioritize organizations working in rural, insecure, or displaced communities? That's question 1. Question 2, can you please share again the particular criteria that was used to identify donors and ops for both databases and opportunities for both databases in terms of alignment with feminist, progressive, or women's rights? What factors would keep donors off the database? That's a longer question and maybe another a webinar itself. But if you can just be very quick, Kasia, over to you.
Yeah, and I appreciate the question is about the both databases. So I'm just going to respond about who can fund me. The really the basic criteria we had for including the funders in the database was their commitment to funding gender equality, women's rights, and feminist movements. And I'm also just, being very explicit about gender equality and women's rights. Some funders, it's not a competition in this, the who can fund me database is not a ranking of who is the most feminist or who is the best feminist funder. I want to be explicit about that because different funders use different languages and they have different thematic priorities, but we really wanted to have more like an open circle, open approach. If you're committed to funding gender equality and women's rights, you're welcome. So this was really the basic thing. And in terms of the how can we ensure that the funding is accessible? Again, we cannot ensure, but what we've tried is we try to develop these different filters that I have taken you through, whether it's a geographical focus, whether who's funding unregistered group, whether there is a core funding, right? We know that these are the demands and requests that feminists have put out for decades. So at least you can try to look for those funders who are closest to your political organizers and to your political agendas. Will all of them be close to you? Probably not. Will all of them will you be eligible to apply for all that funding? Probably not, but we truly hope that you will find the best match. It's almost like finding the best match, right? And this is what we try to do. We try to do this work of identifying who's out there, but then there is this other, option. There's another and further levels of due diligence that is really, up to you, up to our members, up to our partners, up to us to do. Whether what is it that kind of this commitment and this offer from this funder stands for. We tried our best to identify the opportunities that are accessible, but we could only do what we can at this point. Okay, Faye, I know you're looking at me. Over to you.
Thank you, Kasia. It's an interesting webinar, and there are lots of questions coming. Please know that these questions, there will be a thread in the AWID community, so you'll be able to get your answers from there. There was a question in Spanish from Venezuela, which was asking if the basic guide is going to be translated into Spanish, and I think I heard Paz say in Spanish and in French, so please look out for it. I want to thank our speakers, Paz, Kasia, and Alex. It's really been a pleasure conversing with you this afternoon, and well done. I don't know if people understand the amount of hard work that's gone into this. For those in AWID behind the scenes as well, thank you. And before we wrap up, I'm just going to quickly pass over to you, Jess, and I'm sorry that I've left you not with enough time.
It's
Forgive
okay.
me.
Thanks, everyone. I just have a few takeaways to share with you. The next events that are coming up. For one, we have a member-led African feminist LGBTQ solidarity circle that's meeting tomorrow. If you're interested, the link is in the chat. We also have an organizational open house on June 25th. And this is a way for you to organizations to better understand how to onboard onto the AWID community. And finally, we have a really important space, the Solidarity Space, on July 8th, and it's our quarterly session. It's a feminist town hall where we all get together and people can share what's happening in their country, a regional context directly with other members. So please sign up for those. And thanks everyone for joining. And we should also play that very fabulous Where's the Money song as we exit. So it will be in everyone's head. And we'll also share the video. Thanks all. Have a great day. Juhi, please play the song. Bye.
¿Dónde está la plata?
Where is the money?
Pesa de su padre.
Para beber.
Where is the money?
Pesi kwapi?
Tanzania, Barueta.
Where is the money? We gotta know. ¿Dónde está el dinero?
Ready?
Para beber.
Where is the money? We gotta know.